My friends, look around you. Not at the screens, not at the headlines, not at the shouting. Look at the roads, the ports, the power lines, the digital rails that no one sees but everyone uses. That's where the future is being built, not in the boardrooms of the loudest, but in the quiet corners where someone decided, I will not wait for permission. You think power is in the size of your army, or the speed of your stock price, or the number of followers you have. But power today, power is in what you build when no one is watching. Power is in the system that works before the crisis hits. Power is in the trust that grows silently day after day, like roots under stone. Let me tell you something that will not make the news. The most dangerous country in the world right now is not the one with the most missiles. It's the one that built a payment system so clean, so fast, so open, that a farmer in Yunnan can send money to his daughter in Lagos before breakfast. That country didn't conquer. It connected. And it didn't do it with slogans. It did it with discipline. Think about that. A farmer, a daughter, a payment, no bank, no middleman, no delay, just trust, coded into a system. That's not technology, that's transformation. And it happened because someone, somewhere, decided, we will not wait for the world to be ready. We will make it ready. The world is not being reshaped by the biggest players. It's being reshaped by the most consistent ones. You think change comes from revolutions? No. Change comes from repetition, from the daily choice to do the right thing even when it's slow, even when it's invisible, even when no one claps. Let me be clear. The next 12 months will not be defined by who shouts the loudest. They will be defined by who built the quietest infrastructure. And if you're waiting for a sign, stop waiting. The sign is already there. It's in the way your neighbor pays for groceries with a tap. It's in the solar panel on the school roof that didn't need a federal grant. It's in the child who learned to code because the library had free Wi-Fi, not because the government announced a program. This is not about China. This is not about America. This is not about East or West. This is about what happens when a society chooses foresight over noise, when they choose discipline over distraction, when they choose trust over transaction. Let me say it again. The future belongs not to the fastest, but to the most reliable, not to the biggest, but to the most connected, not to the most talked about, but to the most trusted. That is the new law. And if you are not building that, no matter your title, your bank account, your country, you are already behind. Let me explain. In the last decade, we saw 1,000 startups promise to disrupt. They raised billions. They hired influencers. They ran ads that said, we're changing the game. But when the storm came, when the supply chain broke, when the lights went out, when the trust vanished, what did they have? A slick app, a viral video, a CEO on a podcast. Meanwhile, in another city, another country, another continent, someone was laying fiber optic cable under a road nobody cared about. Someone was training teachers to use open source tools. Someone was designing a water filtration system that cost less than a cup of coffee and lasted 10 years. When the crisis hit, the first group panicked. The second group simply kept going. Why? Because they didn't build for attention. They built for endurance. Let me give you a truth that will not be on any TED Talk. The most powerful organizations in the world are not the ones with the most money. They are the ones with the least friction. Friction is the enemy of progress. Friction is the delay between a need and a solution. Friction is the form you have to fill out 3 times. Friction is the ID you can't verify because the system doesn't talk to the other system. Friction is the cost of doing nothing. And the most successful societies, they didn't just reduce friction. They eliminated it. They built open digital rails like a highway where every vehicle, no matter its size, no matter its origin, can move without tolls, without delays, without permission. They didn't ask, who owns this? They asked, who needs this? And when you answer that question with clarity, consistency, and courage, you don't just create a service. You create dignity. You create inclusion. You create compounding advantage. And that compound, it doesn't show up in quarterly reports. It shows up in a mother who can send money to her child in 3 seconds. In a small business owner who can get a loan in 10 minutes. In a village that gets clean water because a sensor told the system it was needed before anyone even complained. That is the invisible architecture of power, and it is being built right now. Not by decree, not by force, but by design, by discipline, by daily choices. Let me be blunt. You cannot outspend your way into trust. You cannot out-advertise your way into loyalty. You cannot outshout your way into resilience. Trust is earned 1 clean transaction at a time, 1 honest answer, 1 delivered promise, 1 system that works even when the lights flicker. And here's the hard part. Trust is the rarest currency in the world today. It's rarer than gold, rarer than oil, rarer than data. Because money can be printed, data can be stolen. But trust, once broken, it takes decades to rebuild. And yet some are building it every day, in silence, in small ways, in places you've never heard of. And when the world cracks open, when the next shock comes, they will be the ones who stand. Not because they had the biggest army, but because they had the cleanest system. Now, let me show you how foresight is not a strategy, it's a habit. It's the daily decision to think in decades, not days. It's choosing to plant trees you will never sit under. It's investing in skills your children will use, not your competitors. It's building roads that don't yet exist. Because the world doesn't change because of headlines. It changes because of infrastructure. Think about electricity. Who built the first power grid? Not the politician who gave the speech, not the investor who wanted a quick return. Someone who looked at a village without light and said, "What if we could bring power here not tomorrow, not next year, but now?" They didn't wait for the perfect moment. They built the imperfect system, and then they improved it day after day, year after year, until the whole country ran on it. The same is true today. The next great revolution will not be in AI. It will be in the plumbing, in the water systems, in the energy grids, in the digital IDs, in the logistics networks. The most powerful nation in 2040 won't be the one with the most supercomputers. It will be the one with the most resilient water pipes. The one where a child in a remote village can access a doctor through a tablet because the signal doesn't drop, because the battery lasts, because the system was designed for failure, not perfection. That is foresight. And it doesn't require a genius. It requires patience. It requires humility. It requires the courage to build something that no one will celebrate until it's already saving lives. Let me ask you, what are you building that will outlive your ego? What system are you designing that will work when you're gone? If your answer is my next product launch, you're already late. The winners are not the ones who build the flashiest thing. They are the ones who build the most dependable thing. And dependability is not sexy. It's boring. It's repetitive. It's checking the same box, fixing the same bug, training the same teacher, repeating the same process, until it becomes invisible, until it becomes routine, until it becomes trust. And that's to the point. Foresight is not about predicting the future. It's about designing the present so the future has no choice but to be better. Now, let me speak about discipline, because discipline is the engine of trust. You think trust is built by speeches, by press releases, by hashtags? No. Trust is built by clean rules, by low friction, by predictability. Imagine a city where every street light works, where the bus comes on time, where the tax form takes 5 minutes, not 5 days, where your child's school has clean water every day, where the doctor's office doesn't ask for a bribe. That city doesn't have more money, it has more discipline. And discipline is not about punishment, it's about design. It's about systems so clear, so simple, so fair people don't even think about them. They just work. And when they work consistently, reliably, daily, that's when trust is born. Not from a promise, from a pattern. Every time you show up, every time you deliver, every time you fix the problem before it becomes a crisis. That's discipline. And discipline is the only thing that turns money into wealth, turns data into dignity, turns policy into progress. I've seen villages where people didn't have phones, but they had an ID system simple, printed, scanned by a tablet. With that ID, they could get a loan, they could get medicine, they could vote, they could prove they existed. And that changed everything. Because in the world before that system, they were invisible. After, they were citizens. That's the power of discipline. Not the power of the state, the power of the system. And systems are built by people who say, "I will not make exceptions, not for friends, not for politics, not for convenience." Because once you make one exception, the whole thing collapses. Trust is not a big gesture. It's 1,000 small promises kept. And if you want to lead, whether you run a company, a school, a city, or a family, you must become the person who says, "This rule applies to everyone, even me." That is the foundation. That is the quiet revolution. Now, innovation, not the kind you see on stage, not the kind that gets a standing ovation. I'm talking about innovation as policy, meaning the system itself is the product, the platform is the promise, the infrastructure is the innovation. You don't need to invent the next AI model. You need to design the rules that let millions of small innovators use AI. You don't need to build the next electric car. You need to build the charging network that makes electric cars possible. You don't need to invent solar panels. You need to design the financing model that lets a farmer in Bangladesh install one on his roof. That is innovation as policy. It's not about gadgets. It's about access. It's not about speed. It's about scale. It's not about genius. It's about inclusion. The most powerful innovation in the last decade was not ChatGPT. It was the open digital payment, Rail, a system where a street vendor in Manila can receive money from a cousin in Toronto. No bank account, no credit card, No middleman, just a phone, and a clean, open standard. That's innovation, and it didn't come from Silicon Valley. It came from a government that said, we will not control it. We will enable it. That is the difference. The old way, control everything. The new way, design the field, then step back. Let the people play. Let the small players win. Let the bottom up rise. Because the real innovation is not in the code, it's in the permission. It's in the open API. It's in the shared standard. It's in the rule that says anyone can connect, anyone can contribute, anyone can benefit. That is the policy. And it's the most powerful one of our time because it doesn't ask for permission, it gives it. Now, geopolitics. The world is not splitting into two camps. It's splitting into two mindsets. One says build walls, protect what's yours. The other says build bridges, connect what matters. The first one is fear. The second one is foresight. And guess what? Fear doesn't build economies. Connection does. The most stable nations right now are not the ones with the strongest borders. They are the ones with the most connections. A port that serves 10 countries. A rail line that links 3 continents. A digital standard that works from Jakarta to Johannesburg. That is power. Not because it's dominant, but because it's indispensable. You don't control the world by blocking it. You influence it by connecting it. You don't win by shutting doors. You win by keeping them open. And here's the secret. The countries that are thriving are not the ones that pick sides. They are the ones that played all sides. They traded with everyone. They partnered with everyone. They built systems that worked for the neighbor, the rival, the stranger. Because in a fractured world, the most valuable asset is not your army. It's your interoperability, your ability to work with systems you didn't create, your willingness to speak the same language even if it's not your own. That's not weakness. That's wisdom. That's the difference between a fortress and a hub. A fortress looks strong, but it starves. A hub looks vulnerable, but it thrives. And the future belongs to the hubs, not the walls. Now, let me show you a different lens. Not the big player, not the national champion, the underdog, the quiet one, the one with no money, no media, no lobbyists, but something deeper, a belief, a discipline, a refusal to quit. I've seen this in a village in Nepal. No grid, no bank, no internet, but they had a solar microgrid. Built by a group of teenagers who learned from YouTube. They wired the school, the clinic, the market. They didn't wait for aid. They didn't wait for permission. They just did it. And now, 5 years later, that village has more energy than a town 50 miles away because they didn't try to be big. They tried to be useful. They didn't compete with the system. They worked around it. They didn't ask for funding. They asked for tools. And when you give someone tools, not money, not pity, not a speech, but real, usable tools, they build more than a grid. They build dignity. They build confidence. They build a new kind of power. This is not an exception. It's a pattern. It's happening everywhere. In Kenya, where a girl uses her phone to sell mangoes to buyers in Nairobi. In Mexico, where a grandmother runs a small bakery because the digital payment system lets her accept payments without a bank. In Indonesia, where a fisherman gets real-time weather alerts on his phone because the government opened the data. These are not revolutions. They are repetitions. Small wins, daily, quiet, unnoticed, until they add up. And when they add up, they change everything. This is the chess mindset, not checkers. In checkers, you jump, you capture, you win by removing the other player. In chess, you think 3 moves ahead. You sacrifice a pawn to control the center. You build position. You create space. You don't crush your opponent. You outlast them. And in the long game, the only game that matters, you don't need to be the strongest. You need to be the most patient, the most consistent, the most connected, the most inclusive. Because the world doesn't belong to the fastest. It belongs to the most adaptable. And adaptation is not a skill. It's a culture. It's the daily habit of asking, who did we leave out? Who didn't we include? Whose voice didn't we hear? That's the real edge. Not the algorithm, not the capital, not the data. The question. Now, a warning. Success is dangerous because it makes you believe you're invincible. You built a system. It worked. So you stop improving. You stop listening. You start protecting. You think we're the best. Why change? And that's when the cracks begin. A system that works today will break tomorrow if you stop maintaining it. Trust is not a monument. It's a garden. You water it every day. Or it dies. I've seen cities that had perfect systems. Then they became complacent. The ID system stopped updating. The payment rail stopped expanding. The school curriculum stopped evolving. And within 5 years, collapse. Not from war, not from disaster, from boredom, from comfort, from the quiet belief that we've already won. That's the deadliest enemy, not the rival, not the crisis. The belief that you don't need to change, that your model is final, that your rules are perfect, that your system is done. It's never done. It's always being rebuilt, every day, by every person who uses it. If you stop listening, if you stop improving, if you stop including the new voices, The quiet ones, the ones who don't shout, you will be replaced. Not by a bigger player, by a better one. One that remembers. Systems are alive, they breathe, they adapt, they evolve, or they die. And the ones that die, they don't crash, they fade, like a light that slowly dims. No one notices, until it's dark. And then they wonder, what happened? The answer is simple. They stopped showing up, they stopped listening, they stopped building. And now, a parable, not from a CEO, not from a president, from a man named Lee. He lived in a village with no roads, no electricity, no internet. He had one phone, one solar panel, one dream. He didn't want to leave. He wanted to fix his village, so he started small. He taught 5 children how to use the phone to check weather, then 10, then 20. He didn't ask for funding. He didn't write a proposal. He just showed up every morning. He fixed the solar panel when it broke. He taught the elders how to use the app. He translated the instructions into their dialect. He didn't care about fame. He cared about function. After 3 years, the village had a microgrid that powered the clinic, a mobile health app that connected to the city hospital, a digital marketplace where farmers sold directly to buyers. No government program, no NGO, just Lee and his daily discipline and the trust he built. One person, one phone, one choice, every day, to show up, to fix, to teach, to include. And now, the village is a model. The government came, they studied it, they copied it, they scaled it, but they couldn't replicate the heart because they didn't have Lee. They didn't have the daily ritual, the quiet belief, the refusal to wait, the understanding that change doesn't come from speeches, it comes from sweat, from repetition, from showing up when no one is watching. That's founder logic, not genius, not luck, not capital, just discipline, and the courage to start small and keep going. Now, what does this mean for you? Not for the nation, not for the company, for you. Right now, in your life, in your home, in your choices, what are you building? Not for a report, not for a promotion, but for the future. Because the same laws that shape nations shape lives. Foresight, discipline, innovation, connection. They are not just for governments, they are for you. You think you need a big idea to change your life? No. You need a small habit, repeated, daily. Every morning ask yourself, what system am I building today? Is it a system of excuses or a system of action? Is it a system of distraction or a system of focus? Is it a system of noise or a system of trust? Every decision you make is a brick. In the architecture of your life, are you building a house or a house of cards? Let me give you the daily practices. Plan long, not in years, in decades. What will your life look like in 10 years? Not in money, in meaning, in relationships, in peace, in freedom. That's your North Star. Then work backward. What do you need to learn? What habits must you form? What relationships must you protect? What systems must you create? Discipline over comfort. Every day. Wake up 10 minutes earlier. Read 1 page. Write 1 thought. Walk instead of scrolling. Say no to the distraction. Yes to the depth. Because comfort is the slow poison. It doesn't kill you fast. It dulls you slowly until you don't even notice you've stopped growing. Build trust daily. Not in big gestures. In small ones. Keep your word. Show up on time. Answer the message. Do what you say, even when it's inconvenient, even when no one is watching, because trust is not earned in speeches, it's earned in silence. Adapt faster, not by chasing trends, by listening to the quiet signals. What is changing in your neighborhood, in your family, in your industry? Not the headlines, the whispers, the unspoken needs, the people who are struggling but not complaining. That's where the next opportunity lives. And practice reputation hygiene. Your reputation is your most valuable asset, and it's fragile. 1 careless comment, 1 broken promise, 1 moment of dishonesty, and it erodes. Protect it like you protect your eyes. Clean your digital footprint. Speak with integrity. Act with honor, because in a world of noise, the quiet voice of integrity is the loudest. And finally, build checklists, not for work, for life. Before you make a big decision, ask yourself, is this aligned with my 10-year vision? Does this build trust? Does this include others? Does this create more friction or less? If the answer is no, 3 times don't do it. If the answer is yes, 3 times do it. Even if it's hard, even if it's slow, even if no one claps. Because the future is not made by the loud. It's made by the loyal, by the consistent, by the ones who show up every day. Not because they have to, but because they choose to. Now, let me speak to you not as a speaker, but as someone who has watched this play out. I've seen cities rise. I've seen empires fall. I've seen systems that lasted 100 years, and systems that collapsed in 5. And the difference? Not intelligence, not resources, not luck. It was this. The ones who won, They built for the long game. They chose discipline over comfort. They chose trust over noise. They chose inclusion over control. They chose connection over conquest. And they didn't do it for applause. They did it because they knew deep in their bones that the world doesn't change because of one big moment. It changes because of 1,000 small ones. And if you are reading this, know this: you are not too late. You are not too small. You are not too unknown. You are exactly where you need to be. Because the next great movement, it doesn't start with a rally. It starts with a single person who decides today to build something that lasts. Not for fame, not for money, but for meaning, for dignity, for the child who will live in a world better than the one they inherited. That is the legacy. Not the title, not the bank balance, not the follower count, the quiet system, the clean rule, the daily discipline, the trust you built, one brick, one day, one choice at a time. So I ask you now, what will you build? Not in the next year, not in the next 5, but in the next 10. Will you be the one who waited or the one who built? Will you be the one who shouted or the one who showed up? Will you be the one who sought applause or the one who served? The world is not waiting for a hero. It's waiting for you to do the quiet work, to build the invisible system, to choose discipline, to choose trust, to choose the long term. Outsmart, don't outfight. Build models others copy. Choose discipline, choose trust, choose the long term. And when no one is watching, keep going, because that's when the future is made. Not in the spotlight, in the silence. Between one breath and the next. Start now.